Chapter 50. Bitterness was displayed in Lu Mingyu's eyes as she thought of the past. She shook her head, and with a smile she said, I have a boyfriend, he went to serve in the army, but I haven't received a message until now, he still hasn't returned. Doesn't serving the army take 2 years before returning? He stayed back. Asked Yang Chen in bewilderment. I don't know, his family also moved. Lu Mingyu smiled with exhaustion and said, perhaps it's as the others said, and he took up some kind of important post. To continue dragging on like this isn't the solution. You are a woman, and should know the importance of age. Yang Chen silently cursed that man, throwing away a woman like that, taking up that secret job or something, what for? Lu Mingyu nodded, so what, I always think of him, I can't forget, how can I accept another man? Stopping for a moment, she then smiled and continued, all right, let's not mention these things, it's about time to get off work, let's return to the office. Naturally, Yang Chen had no objection. Since the victim had already requested not to make a fuss out of this, he could only listen to her. That said, Yang Chen still held the check written by Guo Ziyang, and he had to hand it over to his heartless and boring beauty superior. When he entered the office, a bunch of city ladies had already began dressing themselves up to prepare to get off from work. They groomed themselves prettily, obviously they wanted to go enjoy the radiant and passionate night life. Zhao Hongyan and Zhang Kai were instead pretty tranquil, they didn't specially put on makeup. Seeing Yang Chen return, they smiled and greeted. Did the task go smoothly? You returned so late? Asked Zhao Hongyan. Yang Chen nodded. He curiously asked, why did you and Zhang Kai not groom yourselves like the others, or change your clothes? Zhao Hongyan grudgingly sighed and said, can't you tell? Zhang Kai and I are both married women, the both of us married last year, what need do we have for those? So you guys were married. Yang Chen was really shocked, he felt deep affection for the two newlywed women. No wonder their figures were more well-rounded than the other female colleagues. Zhang Kai laughed and said, Yang Chen, it can't be that you really wanted to do something to us, right? We have husbands, don't fight with them for us. Yang Chen is also a married person with a wife, we're the same. Zhao Hongyan pursed her lips into a smile and said. In his heart Yang Chen thought, can the relationship between him and that girl Lin Ruoxi still be considered husband and wife? Naturally, he didn't say it out. After awkwardly smiling, he ran towards Mo Qianni's office with his tail between his legs. The desk lamp was already turned on in the office, and its light rays were all over the dark room. Mo Qianni had her jacket taken off, and only had a pure white short-sleeves shirt on, seriously writing something. On top of her sharp nose laid a pair of gold-rimmed spectacles, her hair was simply tied into a braid, with a few strands of hair covering her smooth face. With a concentrated expression, so much so that she did not even notice Yang Chen lightly pushing the door open. This was a beautiful you. Don't you know to knock the door first? Mo Qianni finally noticed Yang Chen, who had walked to the opposite side of the table, although she was very curious as to how this man seemed unscathed with his hateful smile still remaining, but naturally, she wouldn't even bat an eyelid, and indifferently asked. Yang Chen pulled a chair over and sat down, then placed the check in his hand onto the table very slowly. I don't have much experience, next time I'll take note to knock. What's this? Mo Qianni put down the pen in her hand, and stared at the check on the table with skepticism. Amount, 400,000. Yang Chen laughed, didn't Miss Mo send me to chase a debt? A balance of 400,000, not a cent less. Mo Qianni picked up the check, and looked at the drawers column. It was really Hua Cheng Apparel's shameless hoodlum leader, Guo Ziyang. Shocked in her heart, she raised her head to take a good look at Yang Chen. She truly had no idea how this fella managed to make the opposite party obediently hand back the money they owed. You're unharmed, right? Mo Qianni finally couldn't resist asking. She sized Yang Chen up. She kept thinking that Yang Chen should only return after desperately struggling and being beaten to a pulp. The last few times specialized personnel were sent, they all entered the hospital. There was even one who still had an uncured injury and was still on wheelchair. Yang Chen pretended to know nothing. He made a motion with his hands, and, puzzlingly, asked, what harm, isn't it just asking for a balance? I found them pretty easy to talk to, it was even Boss Guo who personally ordered people to send me back. Curse it. Could it be that bunch of gangsters have turned into herbivores? Mo Qianni was enraged in her heart. To be able to bring back the money owed was of course a good thing, but seeing the man in front of her eyes without any injuries, with that relaxed face, why did she feel so unresigned in her heart? Such emotions naturally couldn't be shown on the surface. Mo Chiani took a deep breath, then said, "Thanks for your trouble. You will receive a bonus along with the end of month's salary. You may get off work now." "Then I really have to thank Miss Mo." Appearing to be very satisfied, Yang Chen nodded, stood up and walked to the door. Right before he walked out, he turned his head back, and with a smile that wasn't a smile he said, "Miss Mo, this black clothing of yours is not bad, very pretty." After Yang Chen left, Mo Chiani was still baffled and looked down at her body. She was obviously wearing a white shirt. Where did the black come from? Taking a careful look, she realized there were two faintly black areas in front of her chest. It was because the shirt seemed a little translucent due to the desk light, which was why the brief outline could be seen. That wasn't a shirt, it was a bra. Yang Chen, once she cleared things up. Mo Chiani flushed with anger and clenched her teeth. She slammed the tabletop with her palm, and her eyes looked as if fire was about to be shot out. "Just you wait." After bidding farewells to the numerous sisters in the office, Yang Chen finally understood the joy of being a white-collared worker. This job was indeed a little boring compared to selling mutton skewers, but its environment was indeed pretty good. Merely the latest fragrance that permeates the air was not something that the stink of the farmer's market could compare to. Arriving at the basement car park, Yang Chen got into his car, and suddenly his phone rang. It was Li Jingjing. Yang Chen laughed and picked up the phone. "Hello. Big brother Yang." Li Jingjing's words were spoken with a tinge of happiness. "Thank you." "Thank me for what?" Yang Chen naturally wouldn't take the initiative to admit that he was the one who slaughtered Chen Dehai. For the matter regarding Chen Dehai, Li Jingjing spoke softly, then seemed to came to the realization of something, as she changed the topic saying, "Anyways, thank you, Dad, Mom and me are all very happy." Hearing the girl's gentle voice, Yang Chen sighed a breath of relief. It seemed like this brat was also quick-witted. He laughed and said, "Is that so? Then it's all good, let your father continue doing his business, I'll come to chat with him tomorrow morning." "Yep, understood. Is there anything else?" Yang Chen didn't mind chatting with Li Jingjing a little longer, but as it gets late, there might be a traffic jam. "Other things, there's nothing else." Li Jingjing hesitated for a moment, and said, "Just want to know when Big Brother Yang is coming to the school to see me." Only now did Yang Chen remember agreeing to this matter. He couldn't help but feel vexed by his own carelessness, and hurriedly said, "I've just started work this week, so I'm a little busy. However, I will definitely go during next week, don't worry." Only with this did Li Jingjing happily agree, and put down the phone. Just as Yang Chen was about to start the car, the phone rang again. This time, it was actually Wang Ma. He was baffled as to why Wang Ma called him at such a time, as he had already mentioned that he was coming home for dinner. He picked up the phone and before he spoke a word, on the other side of the line, Wang Ma impatiently shouted, "Young master. Please hurry on back. Something happened." Chapter 51. Yang Chen's keen nerves had him immediately start the car, and step on the accelerator. The M3 roared as it dashed out of the basement car park. Several of Yulei International's security guards stared blankly at the silhouette of the car disappearing off into the distance, and looked amongst themselves in confusion. None of them knew which of the big figures in the company had such skill in driving cars. While driving, Yang Chen asked, "What happened, Wang Ma?" The moment Miss got off work and returned home, Master came, and they're now quarreling outside. Wang Ma spoke with a sobbing tone, "Young master, please hurry on back. Master even brought a large number of people back. They don't seem like good people. I'm afraid that they will harm MI." Before Wang Ma finished speaking, a knocking noise came from the other side of the line. Immediately after, a familiar male voice entered Yang Chen's ears. "You're the stinking brat with the surname Yang, right? I am Lin Kun, I'm right here waiting for you. If you have the guts, come here at once." Yang Chen's hand, which was holding the steering wheel, immediately had its veins pop out. He could clearly hear Wang Ma's wailing on the other side of the line. It was obvious that her phone had been forcibly snatched away. "Do you know what you are doing? I'm very clear of it. You with the surname Yang, if you have the guts, get over here now. I want to see what abilities you, a mutton skewer selling bastard, have that made my Lin family's little slut do such unfilial things." Yang Chen didn't speak further, he expressionlessly cut the call. Fact is, if this phone wasn't a gift from Lin Ruoxi, he might have already crushed it into pieces. In a flash the accelerator was floored, although it was peak hour with highly congested traffic, the roaring engine made a substantial number of cars obediently give way. The white BMW blew past like a hurricane, provoking a countless number of rebukes, but all of these didn't matter to Yang Chen. At that moment, in Yang Chen's eyes there was only a straight path, there were no traffic laws, no traffic lights, what he wanted was speed, speed and more speed. On the route which usually required more than 20 minutes, Yang Chen, like a missile, had spent less than 10 minutes to reach his destination. In front of the villa, the car came to a screeching halt, throwing up a cloud of smoke and dust. At that moment, it was already dusk. The waning golden light scattered across the spacious and top-grade villa area of Dragon Garden. This caused the trees to reflect a hint of red, while causing the grass to appear like a river of gold, and the landscape to be exceptionally beautiful. But Yang Chen simply didn't have the mood to appreciate this rare view. After getting out the car, he walked towards the villa's main door with a grave expression. Before Yang Chen had reached the door, it was vigorously opened. The figure of Lin Kun, with an upright posture and in a suit came walking out, his face that originally looked smart and mature instead seemed shady and excited in this moment. It was as if he could foresee that he would be able to take revenge against Yang Chen for the humiliation he brought onto him. Behind him, were 5 young men that wore identical clothing, black tight short-sleeved shi. Ha ha. Bastard, you really have the guts to come back here, I thought you were frightened to the point of being too afraid to return. Lin Kun slanted his head, raising the corner of his eye. His eyes revealed deep hatred from within. Yang Chen sighed. It seems like my temperament has indeed mellowed. Otherwise, simply based on that line of profanity from him, there would have been enough reason to slice off his tongue. Unenthusiastically, he stared at Lin Kun and asked, "Where is Ruoxi and Wang Ma?" The moment those words were spoken, 2 figures walked out from the villa's door. Young master, be careful. By the door, Wang Ma who was wearing an apron supported the pale-faced Lin Ruoxi out. Lin Ruoxi hadn't changed out of her office clothing, it was like her cool and radiating pretty face had lost its soul. Her gaze was gloomy, her hair seemed messy, and she blankly stared at the floor without any focus, as if everything that was happening in front of her eyes was of no relation to her. If one was to say this scene of Ruoxi made Yang Chen feel some pain in his heart, then the red handprint on Wang Ma's face instead made a murderous look flash through Yang Chen's eyes. It was a pity, Lin Kun evidently didn't notice such a change in Yang Chen's expression. Brat that sells mutton skewers, let me tell you, since you returned here today, you asked for it. My brother's fists and kicks have no eyes, if you wish to receive less of a beating, then kneel on the ground and kowtow to me dozens of times, then lick my leather shoes clean, and obediently walk into the garbage bin. Perhaps I would let you off with that, and let you get lost. Lin Kun laughed weirdly, his voice seemed to include traces of madness. Lin Kun, Yang Chen raised his head, and coldly gazed at this insolent man in front of his eyes. I seem to have told you before, I as a person, hate being threatened the most. You can threaten me, but you better be prepared to bear the consequences of it. I'm threatening you. Bastard. What can you do? Do you have the ability to knock down these 5 brothers of mine? From anger into laughter, Lin Kun roared out. Yang Chen didn't speak more, step by step he closed in onto Lin Kun. The 5 hired thugs obviously didn't take Yang Chen seriously, after all, judging solely by appearance, this youngster simply didn't have the strength to retaliate. So when they saw Yang Chen approaching, only a single man walked forward, he looked at Yang Chen with contempt while walking towards Yang Chen. Yang Chen was too lazy to look at the black-clothed man blocking the way, seeing the black-clothed man raise his arms and swing his fist at high speed, as if it went through precise calculations, Yang Chen also swung a fist to receive it. Bam! The 2 fists collided, and a cracking sound actually came from it, but the result that emerged was something that left everybody present incomparably shocked. The man who took the initiative to raise his fists had a warped expression, he hugged the fist he swung, and kneeled onto the ground in pain. Bean-sized drops of sweat dripped down, the man actually felt that all the bones in his whole arm were smashed into pieces. After feeling the severe waves of pain from it, he fainted on the spot. Before the remaining 4 thugs seemed to have gained awareness of the situation, Yang Chen had already walked forward. Quickly go up and fight. Lin Kun felt that something was amiss, and commanded them in a flurry. Only then did the four men fiendishly launch their kicks at Yang Chen, intending to bring Yang Chen down onto the ground. But when the four men's attacks landed on Yang Chen's body, they suddenly realized, it didn't matter whether the kick landed on Yang Chen's chest, stomach, thigh or wherever, the attacks didn't even make Yang Chen's body flinch, as if their kicks landed on a thick and heavy iron plate, or a gigantic boulder, their strength was simply insufficient to cause any form of harm towards this monster. The four men immediately had their backs full of cold sweat. This fella, is his body made of steel? Yang Chen's gaze had been rigidly set on Lin Kun in front. After receiving the attacks, he casually raised his hands formed into the shape of knives. The four pitiful hired thugs basically didn't have any chance to launch another attack or jump away before they felt their vision turn blurry. Every single one of them had their nape fiercely struck with a chop. What the others saw seemed to be just Yang Chen's figure gently wafting past, when the four originally healthy and robust men fell onto the ground, unconscious. At this moment, Lin Kun feels a wave of regret bubbling inside him, however he doesn't feel that it is a mistake to take revenge against Yang Chen. He instead feels that he should have asked the person helping him for a few more helpers. Chapter 52. It's your turn. Yang Chen stood face to face with Lin Kun, looking at Lin Kun the same way a butcher looked at a piece of meat on the chopping block. Tranquilly he asked, do you want a broken leg or a broken arm? If you wanna die, I could also help you with that. He wasn't joking. Only then did Lin Kun react, because this was the first time he felt murderous intent from somebody's eyes, stark naked and true murderous intent. He will really kill me. You, stay away. Lin Kun was afraid and slowly retreated, trying to gain some distance from Yang Chen, but behind him was the staircase and the villa's main door. Suddenly, Lin Kun turned his head, looked at the blank and emotionless Lin Ruoxi, and loudly shouted, little slut. This wild man of yours wants to break your father's legs. Aren't you going to discipline him? Just after he said that, he felt a hand akin to a pair of steel pliers grip onto his chin. A voice so cold that it felt like metal that had been cooled in the snow traveled to his eardrums. Your mouth really stinks, perhaps I should first cut off your tongue, put it back into your mouth, then sew your mouth shut. When you get hungry, you can only eat your own tongue. Tell me, what do you think about this idea? Woo. Woo woo. Lin Kun was so frightened that his face turned ashen and his eyes opened wide. But if he struggled even for a smidgen, Yang Chen's hand that gripped onto his chin would exert a lot more strength. He was already in so much pain that he didn't dare to move an inch. At this moment, Lin Ruoxi, who stood by the door, slowly raised her head. A little bit of luster had finally returned to her beautiful spiritless eyes. She looked at Yang Chen with incomparably complicated emotions, then glanced at Lin Kun, who looked like he was about to pee in his pants. Dispiritedly she said, Yang Chen, let him go, don't scare him anymore. Lin Ruoxi's tone wasn't as cold and indifferent as usual. She spoke very lightly, but it was exactly a line like that which somehow managed to appease Yang Chen's scorching hot anger. She resembles that person too much. Yang Chen was a little helpless. The figure that he deliberately tried to forget flashed through his mind, leaving him momentarily entranced. Yang Chen released his hand, and Lin Kun, who was in pain, felt unresigned while fearfully dodging to the side. He carefully looked at Yang Chen, while gasping heavily. Dad, it was Xu Zihong that had you come, right? These people should have also been given to you by him. Lin Ruoxi calmly looked at Lin Kun, and lightly asked. Lin Kun's face revealed malevolence, and he glared at Yang Chen with hatred. So what if that's the case? Young Master Xu is helping me get rid of this bastard. This kind of asshole wants to plunder the assets of our Lin family. I'll definitely never agree to this. Dad, Lin Ruoxi mournfully called out, with pain in her eyes. Dad, don't you know you are just being used by the Xu family? You are helping Xu Zihong create trouble for me. Do you know what kind of poor state the company is in now? Dad, please sober up a little. Xu Zihong is totally different from who you think he is. Lin Ruoxi's legs staggered. If she wasn't supported by Wang Ma, she would have fallen long ago. Her complexion turned increasingly pale and helpless, and she finally couldn't hold back the tears from pouring down. Dad, how can you think this way? She is my grandmother, your mother. Then how should I think? I want you to marry young Master Xu, yet you refused 1,000 times. Isn't it just because you're afraid that after marriage the position of Yulei's CEO will change owners? Otherwise, based on young Master Zhu's qualifications, why would a slut like you who fakes being noble and virtuous refuse? Lin Kun's rage turned into laughter, ha 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 ha. I hit the mark, do you feel so ashamed that you want to kill yourself? Lin Ruoxi could only feel the sky spin and the earth twist, even breathing had become difficult, it was as if her organs were submerged in quicksilver. Sparkling tears flowed out of her eyes like water from a dam burst and fell onto the ground. At that moment, the always cool and noble queen-like lady couldn't help but cry, she even cried with such grievance. Lin Ruoxi covered her face with her hands as she sobbed, and the sobs drowned the words she spoke. When mom left this world, you didn't even come home to take a look because of a lover you had outside. When grandma left this world, you waited for her to enter the coffin before you made your appearance, and only asked about matters of inheritance. From my memories, other than living a life of debauchery outside, and asking grandma for money, you basically showed no interest in the company's matters. How can grandma feel at ease leaving the company to you, in pain? Lin Ruoxi looked at Lin Kun. Bit her lip and said, Dad, do you not understand what you're doing? Lin Kun's face looked sinister as he coldly said, I did all that because they forced me to. If it wasn't for those two women who ought to have died long ago holding me back, would I need to lower my head and beg them for money? There was obviously so many company shares, why did I only receive such a small amount of money? I am the family's only man, shouldn't I be the one calling the shots? A slut like you only knows how to find excuses. 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 Your words are really the same as farts. Yang Chen truly found it hard to listen further, he really didn't understand how a woman like Lin Ruoxi could have such a retarded and insane father. Perhaps it was heaven messing with people, or it could be that hateful people had to be pitiful as well. In a flash, Yang Chen's hand had grabbed onto Lin Kun's neck, he exerted a little strength and Lin Kun's face flushed from being unable to breathe. Lin Kun's body erratically jerked, but was unable to break free. If this was handled my way, you would have died at least 7 or 8 times today, said Yang Chen indifferently. He looked towards the slightly nervous-looking Lin Ruoxi by the door, then said, however, in the end my wife is more soft-hearted. If I killed a father like you, she definitely wouldn't forgive me easily. With that said, Yang Chen released his grip on Lin Kun's neck, but followed up with a lightning-quick chop at Lin Kun's nape. Lin Kun's eyes rolled over, and he immediately fainted onto the ground. Yang Chen. What did you do to him? Lin Ruoxi was still worried as she walked over, and squatted down to check for breathing from Lin Kun's nose, confirming that he didn't die. She sighed a breath of relief. Anyhow, blood was thicker than water. Leave him to me. Yang Chen stooped down and placed Lin Kun's body on his shoulder, then he walked towards the nearby garbage bin. Lin Ruoxi panicked, and hurriedly stopped him. Don't throw him in, this is enough. I didn't cripple or kill him, that is already giving you a lot of face. He treats you like that, yet you still think of him as your father, I'm speechless. However, I hope you also consider my feelings, no matter what you think in your heart, as of right now, I am your husband. Yang Chen's tone was flat and dull, but every word was like a law that didn't allow disobedience. With that all said, he directly walked towards the garbage bin. Right now I am your husband. Right now I am your husband. Lin Ruoxi's arms hung loose as she stood in the same place as if her soul left her, gazing at Yang Chen's back without a word. After Yang Chen once again threw Lin Kun's body into the garbage bin, he heard Wang Ma shouting just as he was about to turn around. Miss.